So this also gives me an opportunity to introduce Sergio Barbarino. Sergio is a research fellow at Procter & Gamble and the chairman of ALICE, which is an EU innovation platform for logistics aimed at realizing the physical internet. Sergio has been an incredible partner in crime. Well, there's no crime involved, but incredible partner in helping us execute on a European Union grant we have with the European Union and the Customs Union. And in particular, he has actually helped us and our students learn a lot about specific things, in a particular, the Tide Pods that I was joking with him about, which is not a joke, it's important. But Sergio is an incredible perspective on many things that happen within P&G, and he's going to talk to us about BCP, which is Business Continuity Planning. Take it away, Sergio.
So, thank you, Anand. So, as I'm Italian, I must say to all teenagers of America, stop eating Tide Pods. I mean, eat Italian food. We do pizza from my home city, Napoli, spaghetti. I mean, there is amazing variety of food that you can eat. Tide Pods are really not good. But they're very good for doing your laundry after you have eaten. Especially with your lovely tomato sauce all over your shirt. That's fantastic. Good. So, I've been working in P&G for 26 years, and I've encountered BCP often. And what I want to talk to you today is real experiences of what happened to us. But I want to start with, remember where my company started from. I mean, in the end, you build your supply chain based on your circumstances. The company started out of these two guys, Mr. Procter and Mr. Gamble. They were making two different products, bar soaps, one, and candles, the other. And they were sharing the same supply chain. Why? Because they were based in Cincinnati. Cincinnati at the time was the biggest slaughterhouse of pigs in America, so there was a lot of fat. And fat is the basic raw material to do both candles and bar soaps. Now, your supply chain risk can come from anywhere. I mean, we hired a very bright guy called Thomas Alva Edison, who did the first production plan system for us. We didn't retain him, I'm afraid, so he started his own company called General Electric, invented the light bulb, and half of our business was dead. Despite that, with half of the business, we made the biggest consumer goods company in the world. So sometimes, you know, even after a bad BCP, yes, your business can change a lot, but you can still survive and thrive if you have the right principles. So never despair. Our purpose is to do good consumer products that people like. Now, clearly, none of our product is fundamental for survival of people. And actually, we have been challenged on that a few years ago, that maybe we should have a higher aspiration of saving life on top of improving people's lives. But at the end of the day, I mean, some of our products are really fundamental for some people to feel okay that day. I mean, the day of an interview and you have your perspirant okay, and your shampoo and your stuff and, you know, your cosmetics. I mean, these are very basics. I've been working in Africa. You would not imagine how girls are able to starve, but they are not going to renounce to the hairdresser's appointment. So, you know, human rights is a large definition, and what is a human right in our eyes is not the same for other people. So never underestimate how these stupid little products are important for people to thrive and keep on with their life. I come from a city, Naples in Italy, that has this big guy looming over it. And this is one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world. The last eruption was 1944, so not even 100 years ago. And 3 million people live just below. You see, it's built almost up to halfway high. I mean, it's incredible what they allow to do. We had a big earthquake in 1980, 23rd of November, I still remember. The day before, I was sleeping in a castle that went down, so I survived by chance. And after that earthquake, they decided to do a big meeting and do a bit of risk management plan for the city. We didn't have one. My father was working for the electrical company, and he went to the meeting in the council of the town. He came back home that night and he said, Sergio, we are doomed. I said, what do you mean? He said, we made a calculation that if we want to take, if the volcanologists give us a warning and we need to take everybody out, it's going to take at least 2 weeks. And the volcanologists tell us we can probably give you 3 days in advance. And I said, but what's the problem, Father? I mean, we have trains. Yes, but you can count on a train driver to take passengers out of the disaster area. How you are going to convince them to drive the train back in and pick more people? It's not going to happen. I said, oops. So the problem of BCPs is that you will hear a lot of hero stories, and there are heroes, right? But you cannot count on them. By the way, this is a message to Mr. President Trump about gun shooting. I mean, yes, there can be heroes in those situations, but your BCP should go beyond heroes and it should have a bit more ground for safety up front. Not that heroes are to be discounted, but it cannot be your plan A. Another example of first time I encountered, and actually I studied this one because it was important for a BCP that I was writing. We built in 1992 a research center in Japan on Rokko Island in Kobe, the building that you see down there. It was a skyscraper, strange location for a research center. Our analytical people quickly find out that it was not a very good idea because some instruments really don't like the movement of the building, but fine. But something worse happened 3 years later. There was this big earthquake in Kobe, and all of the highways connecting in and out started collapsing. They had a lot of super elevated highways in Kobe. And we didn't have a proper BCP plan for offices and R&D sites at the time. And the learning out of the disaster was that in the end, the biggest hurdle was to understand where people were, gather them back together, and restart. It took about a couple of weeks. So right now, practically speaking, in P&G, when you need to do a BCP plan for offices or R&D facilities, you need to plan for the first 2 weeks. And the most fundamental thing you need to plan for is, how am I going to reach out to all of my employees? How am I going to find out where they are, if they are safe, if they need anything, and if they are able to do something for the company? And that's all you need to do. I mean, the rest gets organized by itself. The moment your employees are empowered, you just, rent an hotel in a safe place and tell them, everybody, if you want to restart urgent work that you were doing, this is where you go. As long as you can tell them, they will figure out by themselves how to reorganize. You don't need to plan much more than that. But these 2 first weeks are critical. And that's where our focus is today, when for non-supply chain risk management, but more for intellectual capacity risk management. Another one, and Professor here mentioned it, is Katrina. If you Google the history of Katrina, you'll find out that the first manufacturing plant in New Orleans to restart after the hurricane was the coffee plant of Folgers that is in New Orleans. And that at the time was a Procter & Gamble plant. We since sold the plant. But what happened there is we were in the middle of the disaster, and there was very poor communication. So the only thing that management in Cincinnati managed to say is that do whatever it takes. And so the plant manager managed to speak to his colleagues in Alexandria, a bit farther north. So Alexandria arranged for all the employees to get their salary paid. They gave $5,000 free interest loan to every family. They ordered mobile homes that they started putting around the manufacturing plant. And they even organized the temporary schools and stuff for the employees. So in other words, they took care of the employees first thing, and then the employees stayed instead of being relocated somewhere else because the company completely took care of them. And they started cleaning up the plant, assessing the mess, and getting all back in shape so that we were the first manufacturing plant to restart. The other interesting part here is to see what our suppliers' reaction was to this. They went out of their way in order to help us. Instead of shipping into the Gulf of Mexico, they started shipping coffee to Long Beach, and then we managed to find a way to get the trucks of coffee beans down to the plant. While the plant was being mopped up and washed up and put back in line, one of our competitors offered the line on their lines in order to pack Folger. So for a short period of time, Folger coffee was packaged in tin boxes instead of the classic plastic box, because this was this competitor of us offered. And of course, they did it for money, but it's interesting that in a disaster situation, people really go out of their way and they help each other, even in helping competitors. And the goodwill that generates also for them, I mean, it's not to be underestimated. Somebody mentioned before, reputation is important. So if you act as a good citizen and you go out of your way, I mean, it's always recognized, even if in this case it was pretty sensitive because it was help from a competitor. The same year we had another hurricane, and also hit this, more or less the same area, but this is more toward Texas. It didn't hit P&G directly, but it's some of our most important suppliers that make the actives that go into Tide detergent. There, I mean, the situation was some of the basic supplies were not available anymore. So what do? Do we stop making Tide? I mean, taking into account that I think in the US at the time, 60% of households were using the detergent. It's like saying to all Americans, sorry, you need to go a bit dirty around because we cannot make detergent anymore. So that was not an option. Now, at the time, we had built for our own purposes, I mean, P&G always tried to be more efficient, modeling of how we can tweak formulas in order to preserve performance rates by using different actives. It was a tool that we used in order to drive cost savings, to do supplier qualification and other stuff. The same people that built that simulation model started working like crazy to find how can we make a detergent without these basic ingredient actives. And they could find some alternative formulas that they could quickly put in production. And so we managed to keep continuity of the business, of course, with an altered formula. So we had to go all kind of crash procedures in order to do safety testing and stuff, because you cannot execute. I mean, when you sign a formula card of Tide, the next day it's in the hands of billions of people, so you really don't want to take any risk. And as the Tide Pods story shows, I mean, we need to plan for normal use of our product, and we need to plan for a lot of abnormal use of our product. And this falls down to my own little experience when I had to do risk analysis for our offices in Belgium. And I went to study these past cases, and how P&G developed the methodologies for BCP. And at the time, they told me, Sergio, it's a global obligation. We need to do this risk analysis. We have selected you as the volunteer. I said, OK, fine. So I went into BCP courses and stuff and everything. And the first thing I learned is that what you really need to do is a risk analysis. What can go wrong? And Gary, before me, show you the matrix. You are trying to understand how the severity of any event and the frequency in which it can happen. And then you try fundamentally to focus your BCP on those events that have high severity and high frequency of happening. And so I went to, if you go online, I mean, you find a lot of beautiful statistics on risks according to the country where you're sitting. So I was working, like today in Belgium. Normally, this is what I see out of my window 360 days of the year. It rains all the time, okay? So I went into the risk analysis for Belgium, hurricane, no, earthquake, no, I mean, these tsunamis, no, I mean, that doesn't happen. What happens is a lot of rain. So for every 10 years, the rain is too much and it starts flooding left and right. So out of my risk analysis, I said, well, fine. So if it is flooding is the problem, probably everything that is in the basement of our buildings is at risk. So I started looking at all the systems and what we had. And what I found that was a bit critical, offices speaking, was all our legal papers were actually in a nice archive in the basement. So I went to talk to the legal department and said, guys, do you still use these papers or you moved everything electronically? No, Sergio, some of these is still legal validity. We need to keep the records. I said, well, my recommendation would that you find a way to move them up. And they said, well, actually, we are moving building next year, so we are going to put it in the plan to move our archive up. I went to our engineering department who had all the drawings of the plants also in the basement and gave the same recommendation. The engineers didn't listen to me. The lawyers did. The next year, we had a flash flooding just on our site. All our basement was completely flooded. And guess what? All the engineering files were destroyed. And my legal people were having coffee and thanking me for the good advice I gave them. So sometimes it can really be very, very, very basics. I mean, you just need to do your work, like Gary said, and spend a bit of time. And it's really no, how do you say, it's not rocket science. I mean, you find what is the major risk and you try to work against it. You'd put a mitigation plan, so for example, move stuff out of the basement if it's so valuable. Then you find possible alternatives. In the case of legal is moving all to electronic documents. With electronic documents, you can spread the records across different servers in different places so that you never hit. That's the way data protection normally is done nowadays in the internet age. And then, it's true, when something hits you, creativity never stops. I would not count on creativity for your BCP. I mean, yes, we are all humans, we are all very creative, and there are amazing stories afterwards that you can say of people that have been super brave. But if you have a tsunami, I mean, yes, you can teach everybody to swim, but that's probably not the best prevention strategy. I mean, you can have better levees and dikes and stuff and things and protections and the Coast Guard. I mean, that's a better way of having your plan A for dealing for this kind of stuff than counting on heroism and creativity of people, even if afterwards it's always fine and nice to hear from the stories. Thank you very much.